20 beaver ready for the flight to mountain meadows. The plane makes a careful approach, ready for the drop. Now into the air and down they swing, down to the ground near a stream or a lake. The box opens and a most unusual and novel trip ends for Mr. Beaver.
This footage was recorded in 1948 Idaho, and yes, those are parachuting beavers, and this actually happened. But was this an overly dramatic scheme straight out of the mind of a crazed environmentalist, or was it pure genius? Naturally, to properly answer that, we need to know why this was even necessary to begin with, and that starts with looking at the history of beavers in America. Due to overhunting for their fur, beaver numbers in America were reduced from tens of millions down to just 100,000 by 1900. And as scientists witnessed habitats suffering from their absence and realised the potential for future damage, the protection of beavers became a priority. But it was never going to be as simple as just leaving the beavers alone. As people moved out of cities and into rural areas of Idaho, they came into direct conflict with the beavers already living there, and soon the state government was flooded with complaints about, well, mostly flooding. Around this time, the standard practice for any wildlife complaints would just be to kill or scare off said wildlife. It's way cheaper and easier than trying to come up with another solution, after all. But the Idaho Fish and Game Department knew of the beavers' role in creating and maintaining wetland habitats, as well as stabilising the water supply for people. So instead of just killing the animals, they opted to move 76 beavers from these conflicted areas into more remote habitats. Translocating animals around this time had a very high mortality rate due to the stress of the process, and it's particularly difficult for beavers, which need to be constantly cooled and watered to survive the heat for long periods of time.
Into the holding crate they go. Whoops. Get back in there, old girl. That's better. Live beaver for new waters.
Previously, the beavers would be taken through multiple truck rides before being taken to the harder to access release sites by horse, so it's easy to see how the stress often proved too much. With such a high chance of failure, it was clear a new plan was needed. After much deliberation, Elmo W. Heater of the Idaho Fish and Game Department eventually came up with the idea to airdrop them into their new homes using leftover parachutes from World War II, and so the test drops began. These trial runs alternated between empty boxes and ones occupied by a beaver named Geronimo, who was dropped multiple times before the design was finalised. This design was simple, it was just two wooden boxes hinged together with ropes binding the whole thing until the box landed and the parachute collapsed, which would loosen the ropes and snap open the hinges without any need for a person to be on hand to release the beaver. As for Geronimo, after his short stint as a paratrooper, he was given a priority place on the first plane out and made his final drop to his new home accompanied by 3 young females. There are no accounts of whether or not Geronimo thought his reward was worth it, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say he was probably pretty happy in the end.
He's on his way now. His nose and his instinct tell him where to find the water.
These drops eventually went ahead for all 76 beavers, with all but one surviving without issue. The single casualty came when a lashing securing the box broke mid-air, with the beaver inside working his way out of the opening and falling 75 feet to the ground. Certainly a horrible way to go, but the survival rate was far better than anything attempted before, and it proved successful. Within months of the relocation, the beavers were already completing their dams and establishing their colonies, presumably with an exaggerated story to tell their young. The project was also cheap, costing around $7 per beaver, which adjusted for inflation is around $84 today. And that price was halved if the parachute returned in a usable condition. While most of the parachutes were successfully recovered for reuse, it's unlikely we'll ever see parachuting beavers again, as nowadays beavers are moved to remote areas using helicopters. Methods have also been developed to allow people and beaver kind to coexist with minimal conflict, such as leveler systems and aptly named beaver deceivers to help prevent flooding. So was this project over the top? Probably. But it proved a far more effective and safe method of releasing beavers than the standard practice in 1948, where the options were obviously far more limited than what we have available to us 74 years on. To answer the question from the start of the video, I think it's kind of both. This was a pure genius, overly dramatic scheme straight out of the mind of a crazed environmentalist. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, you might like to find out why we're flooding a forest in Slovakia. See, beavers create wetlands, we create wetlands, it's all connected, loosely. Until next time, cheers.